Well, good morning, everyone. It is a wonderful day. Of course, it's Wednesday. You know, as I walked into the church this morning here at Ford Community Church, hello, everyone, again. As I walked into church this morning, I was thinking about, typically on a Wednesday, the things that would take place in my day, in my time, or for my day. I'd go to prayer breakfast with several of the pastors here in town. Love doing that, enjoy doing that, meeting with everyone. I'm so looking forward to doing that again soon. And then I'd come to the church here and just sort of prepare for things tonight. And then the aroma would start to fill the church as Andy's in the kitchen starting to cook. And we're getting ready to have our Wednesday night meal. And then, of course, Wednesday night comes and a lot of folks come out and we dine together and enjoy each other's fellowship, and then we have Bible studies. There's kids running everywhere. There's teenagers everywhere. Those are the Wednesday nights that I'm used to and looking forward to. But for right now, this is it. We still got this connection spiritually, this spiritual communion, and of course we connect in physical ways or in other practical ways, but there's still the spiritual communion that connects us. And so that is a wonderful thing, that even though we're apart and we miss those times of fellowship, we are still together and we are still one in Christ. And so I'm excited to present another part of this, maybe the last part of the book of Joel here today. I think we may get through it all if time permits, so we'll see how that goes. But if you recall, in the book of Joel, we're sort of at this point where the nations have stirred themselves up, and God's saying, well, bring it on, let's do this. And they're in this great valley, the valley of Jehoshaphat, or the valley of Jezreel, which is the place of something new being birthed, but also the place of death. So there's obviously this, connotation to something's dying, but something's going to be brought to life. And so now we're getting ready to see sort of the end of that, and then the new beginning, the new growth, the new life that's going to take place. And then we're going to talk about something very specific and a little bit detailed, a little more detailed than sometimes I have in the past, about what's going to take place and what the end times looks like, and how God has really sort of unfolded some things or allowed some things to happen so that we might see this take place. But let's just get right to it. We're down to verse 13. There's this great valley of multitudes, and God's sitting to judge, and he surrounds them. He's ready to judge them. Verse 13 says, put in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Go in and tread, for the winepress is full. The vats are overflowing. So, you see this picture of a field that the harvest is ripe. The winepress, there's grapes everywhere. It's time to crush. And the vats are overflowing, possibly vats of grapes or vats of olives. And again, it's really this picture of the season that they're in, that the time has come to sort of reap this harvest. But this harvest is a different kind of harvest. What's it a harvest of? It says, for their evil is great. So the nations have all gathered, they've stirred themselves up, they're coming against the armies of the Lord, they're coming against Jesus himself. And what are they doing? They're coming on the forces, or on the coattails of this great evil. And they somehow think that they're going to overthrow many of the armies of God. But God knows, of course, that all things, he knows all things, and he's about to sort of surprise them in a mighty, mighty way. The next verse says, multitudes in the valley of decision. Multitudes and multitudes really is the idea of great multitudes. Great multitudes. So, we see great multitudes over and over again in the Bible. In Daniel chapter 9, we see this last day great multitude. But this speaks of greatness of multitudes, and then it's spoken of twice. Greatness of multitudes. In the Hebrew, they would do those sort of things to emphasize the greatness thereof. So, this is possibly the greatest gathering of people in one spot on the planet at any one time. All the people of all time kind of getting there in the valley of decision. So this Jehoshaphat, or this Jezreel, this Megiddo or Armageddon, the valley of decision. And the word decision there doesn't mean, well, I'm going to have to make a decision here. It's really decisiveness. It's the valley of the decision that's already been made. So it's not we'll see who's better here, evil versus good. It's this decision's already been made. Evil is going to be destroyed. It's time for them to be harvested. It's time for them, the grapes of wrath. Revelation speaks of this time where Jesus comes with the sickle and the grapes of wrath. And that is this picture, the picture of the judgment of all things, of all people. Multitudes and multitudes. There in the valley of decision, or the valley of the decision that's already been made. For the day of the Lord is near, in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon are darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. Again, this is the picture of the connection between the sun, the moon, the stars, the people, and the land. We see it over and over again in this book. The connection of God's creation. It's the cosmos, which is, remember the word cosmos means a divine order. So the universe has this divine strategy, this divine order to it. We get the word cosmetology. Ladies understand that word to mean to order the face or to make it, beautiful with makeup and things, cosmetology. So it's the same principle when it comes to the universe. God has created a creation that is divine in nature. It is beautiful. And as the people go, so goes the land. And as the land goes, so goes the stars in the heavens. And as God says, when I pour out my spirit, even the stars react. When I pour out my wrath, even the cosmos understands this. So what's happening here is now we have a picture of the sun and the moon that are darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. There is something so awesome and so great coming that even the universe, ordered by God, worshiping the Father, reacts to what has taken place. The sun and the moon are darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. The Lord roars his voice from Zion. Of course, this is a kingdom principle here that God is uttering his voice. He's speaking. He's roaring. It's a clear messianic picture of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And he's roaring. He utters his voice from Jerusalem, and what happens? The heavens and the earth quake. Again, a picture of this cosmos, this everything sort of in line with what God is doing. And as he utters his voice and roars, all of creation senses it, and they feel it, and they respond to it. It's terrifying. But the Lord, the heavens and the earth quake, or they shake, or they are in awe. But the Lord is a refuge to his people, a stronghold to the people of God. So as the nations tremble, as the earth quakes, as the universe around us, the sun, the moon, and the stars, all those things are reacting to the awesome and terrible day of the Lord. He is a hiding place, a stronghold. He is security. He's a refuge to his people. Now look at verse 17. Here we begin to see now the shift from this, what was the wrath of God. The wrath of God, by the way, will bring forth the restoration of all things. So what is often looked at as just a time of terror is also a time of restoration. It's kind of like when a fire sweeps through a forest. It does terrible damage, but it also cleans out a lot of the roughage and things so that when things do regrow, there's always a newness, even more rich forest that grows in its place. And it's the same picture here. God's got to do a little house cleaning, so to speak, so that the new, or weed eating, or, roughaging, removing of the roughage so that some newness can come. And the roughage here happens to be evil. And during the time of this crazy cleaning of the nation, the children of God are going to be in a refuge. They're going to be in a stronghold. God's going to keep them safe, which is a wonderful thing. There's no sense in us going through this wrath or this horror of God, this horror of the evil. So you shall know that I am the Lord your God. So here's the beauty of it. You shall know that I'm Lord. There will be no more guessing. I mean, at this point, there's still faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. But now we will see it clearly. It'll unfold in front of us. We'll know exactly what's taking place. You will know that I am the Lord your God who dwells in Zion, my holy mountain. Again, a picture of the kingdom dynamic of the revelation of who God is. And the mountain of Zion, or this place of present and future glory of God that he speaks from and that he dwells in, my holy mountain. And Jerusalem shall be holy, and strangers shall never again pass through it. So Again, it's the picture of totally wiping out evil, refurbishing, recleansing, restoring all things. And now he says it will never again be desolated with what he calls strangers, or what some translations say foreigners, but it's really a reference to evil and to strange gods. There will be no more infiltration of evil or false religions or false gods in the place, in the presence of God in Jerusalem. The strangers shall never again pass through it. And in that day, which is a reference to, again, the vindication, the mountains shall drip, listen to this, with sweet wine. You know, wine's often a reference to rejoicing or joy. The Bible says the joy of the Lord is our strength. So he's replenishing the earth with what? First of all, joy, because that's our strength. The joy of the Lord is our strength. Anytime you go through a season or a time of difficulty, it's to account or to add to your account joy. God takes you through, or allows you to go through, allows us to go through seasons that he might restore joy. It's something about going through difficulties that makes us rejoice when we get to the other side, or enjoy it, or rejoice in the restoration. Not necessarily in the process. We don't want to have to go through that again, but when we get to the other side, we wouldn't trade what we've learned, because we now have this newness of joy. Paul said it this way: count it all joy when you go through trials and tribulations. The word count there is actually an accounting term that just means to chalk it up for joy. Add one in the deposit. What are we depositing? Joy. Add one in that column. The joy of the Lord, which is our strength. So he says, here's the replenishing. Here comes the newness. First and foremost, the new wine. That's a practical picture of joy, and of course it comes from the fullness of the Lord and the Holy Spirit. And the hills shall flow with milk. You know, what's milk? That's nutrients. It's substance. It is what keeps us. It's provision. It's God saying, not only am I going to give you, this practical, this very foundational joy and rejoicing that keeps you motivated and keeps you moving, but I'm going to provide for you. And not just provide, but look at the next. And all the stream beds of Judah shall flow with water. Not just one little, stream of water. Not some well that you have to pump and pump to get water to come up. But every stream shall be full of water. What's that speak of? The abundance of God. So we have rejoicing, we have the substance, and now we have the abundance or the blessings of God. This new life is going to be so much greater. It's literally taken us back to a time like the Garden of Eden, where the waters of God were just flowing and the people had access. And there was a blessing about the whole earth and not a curse. And it's restoring those things. And a fountain shall come forth from the house of the Lord, and the water, the valley of Shittim, which is acacia, or the wood that was made, the Ark of the Covenant, where the presence of God, that wood, that speaks of this valley, or that region. So basically it's saying this, that the Holy Spirit, the holiness of God, we're going to once again have access to the rivers of the Holy of Holies, a pure and steady stream flowing from us, just like it did to Adam and Eve before the fall. What a picture of things that are going to be restored, even amidst the desolation. Verse 19, and it shall become a desolation. Egypt shall become a desolation. Of course, we know of Egypt and what that refers to, not just those folks who came against Israel from Egypt, but really the world. But look at this. So Egypt shall become a desolation. There will be no more growth, no more land, no more prosperity there. And Edom, a desolate wilderness. Edom's a very, it's mentioned over 100 times in the Bible. We're going to talk about that as we sort of wrap things up here this morning. But before we get to that, I want to just finish this through a little bit. Edom will be a desolate wilderness as well. We'll connect those dots here in a moment. For the violence done to the people of Judah. Why will Egypt and Edom become a wilderness and desolate? Why will they be no more flourishing, no more? Because of the violence done to the people of Judah. People of Judah, of course, Israel. It seems as though this focus that has been, the book of Romans sort of talks about this day of the Gentile. But there will become a season when God will again turn his attention back to Judah and the restoration of his people, the Jews. And it seems like we're kind of seeing that come about here. And he's going to, in fact, not only judge the land and evil, but he's going to judge specifically those people who have come against his people. He's let this go on for a while for a purpose, but it's time to end those things. Let's connect those dots. So the first thing is this. What's the violence done? There's been violence done throughout eternity, or throughout all of time. Why is this violence so different? There are two types of violence recorded in the Hebrew language. One is a violence that has some sort of meaning to it. You know, they went to war. Maybe it was a holy violence. Maybe it was a violence wasn't necessarily good, but they wanted to capture land. But they at least had a common goal. It had some sort of purpose. Might have been wrong at times. There was definitely things that went violent things that were not necessarily right. But there's also a violence that the Bible speaks of, which is the word Hamas. You've probably heard that word, a Muslim brotherhood, and associated with rebels and different things at times. That's a long and drawn-out story, maybe for another session, but you've probably heard of it. You could understand a little bit about what this might relate to. Now, Hamas is the word for violence without cause. It's associated with a violence that is desperately wrong. It is a violence just for the sake of violence. It is a people rejoicing over violent acts for no good cause, just for the sake of watching people suffer. That is Hamas. That is this violence that is spoken of here. And so Egypt and Edom will be judged because of the violence, the useless, aimless, rejoicing in violence that is done over the people of God, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. But Judah, see, here's the restoration again. There's been that season of the fire that's burned through all of Jerusalem and all the Jews. But Judah shall be inhabited forever. So those people who have set the fire, so to speak, those people who have caused the pain, who have sent forth violence, Egypt and Edom, they shall be desolate and wildernesses forever. But Judah shall come through and reflourish. They shall come through and be inhabited forever. What a picture. Jerusalem to all generations. I will avenge their blood. The word there is to cleanse. I will cleanse their blood, the blood of Judah. Blood that I have not avenged. In other words, I've let this go on. You know, we come through victory through trial. God has let some of these things take place. He's actually allowed this to happen, and we see this throughout history, so that he might eventually draw his people back to him. Sometimes it takes us seeing the desperation, seeing the depravity of evil, so that we know how glorious and good our living Savior really is. So we've seen that. The Jews have certainly seen that. They've seen the depravity of humanity. They've seen how evil man can be. But God has allowed them to see that so that they might see how good and awesome our God and Father is. I will avenge their blood, blood that I have not yet avenged. For the Lord dwells in Zion, and he's the judge of all. So what God is saying is, I've allowed some things to take place. I have judged some things, but I've not judged all things. I've allowed them to carry on, but there is a judgment coming. Now let's talk about that judgment. Let's talk about Edom. If you know Edom, Edom has its roots in Esau. The story of Jacob and Esau, the two twins, twin brothers who were born of Isaac, and of course Isaac of Abraham. You know, there was a covenant with Abraham that he would be the father of many people, many nations specifically. Now catch that, nations plural. Then he has Isaac, Isaac has Jacob and Esau. Esau is really in line to be the inheritant of his father's goods. He would be the father of these great people. But what takes place, Jacob, kind of sneaky, hill grabber, his name means hill grabber, he kind of grabs Esau and says, I'm going first. And he gets the blessing. And the blessing over Jacob is that he would be a father of a great nation, singular. So Abraham, plural, nations, Jacob, singular. The word there means a holy convocation, a group of holy people. That's Jacob's lot. That's his inheritance. So how is the nation spelled out? Well, Esau actually gets part of this blessing as well. In fact, throughout the Bible, you see times when Edom could be overtaken. When Moses brought the people out of Egypt and they came to Edom, they could have desolated them. They could have wiped them out then. But God said, no, they are a marked people. And you will not destroy them. When David came against the Edomites, God said, you cannot totally annihilate them. There were other countries that God said to David, you wipe them out. I don't want to see any of them left. But of Edom, he said, no, they are a marked people. They continue to be marked throughout the generations. Now, if you look back at the roots of Edom or Esau, he comes really from two different nations. He comes from two different directions in what is his lineage. First of all, Jacob married within his tribe, within his group, but Esau married outside. So Jacob becomes the father of one nation, the Jews. Jacob's name's changed to Israel. While Esau becomes the father of many nations. In fact, in Genesis chapter 28, 29, he marries, first of all, two Canaanite women. And so the Canaanites, the heritage there begins to speak of Babylon and eventually Romans. In some of the Jewish literature, the Zohar and different things, it speaks of this, that God allowed Rome to flourish basically for good of humanity. In other words, again, here's this unavenged blood. The Romans did terrible things. For 7 centuries, they captured Israel and, decimated the temple and did terrible things to the Jews over and over again. Shed innocent blood wrongly. So they're being avenged. But not only does that sort of stem from Esau, but also, catch this, Esau married one of Ishmael's descendants. You remember who Ishmael was. When God promised Abraham blessings, the father of many nations, but he had no son. So Sarah thought it might be a good idea for him to have a child with his maidservant, and so Hagar and Abraham have a son. His name is Ishmael, but then Sarah doesn't like him, so they're cast out. Well, the Ishmaelites are a nation. Now they are a people, and Esau marries one of them, and they become Islam, what is now the nation of Islam. So from Esau comes Rome and Islam. Now things are beginning to make sense here. Hamas, of course, is that word for violence. And Islam has done some, not all Islam. Again, we need to pray for those people. If you've watched last week's video, this is not us versus them. This is us. We need to desperately call upon them. And they're getting saved. Many of them are getting saved by the multitudes. They're seeing dreams and having visions, and entire communities are coming to know the Lord. But at the roots of the evil that we know of it as extreme Islam, is this really? This is the picture. Really, we see it. It's satanic at its root, and so the destruction of Jews and Christians alike. We see that taking place throughout history, and we know that blood is going to be avenged. God is allowing it to go on now, but it will bring forth a purpose, just like Rome brought forth a purpose. What was the purpose? Of course, Jesus was crucified at the hands of the Roman soldiers. And Rome will probably have some things, definitely has some ties to the end times, but I believe so does Islam. And God's allowing that to continue because there's, again, this great judgment that's coming. He wants to save those people. He wants to get all those people out. But that evil's allowed to exist so that we can see the grace and the goodness of God. But there is coming a time when that restoration will take place. And what will happen? God says, I'll avenge the blood. I'll avenge those who have come against his people. Edom was spared for generations, but it's time. God is ultimately going to come back and take over those things. Edom, Esau means red. Esau was ruddy and red, and I think that's kind of a picture of God's love and God's vengeance when we think of red. And I just think this whole book of Joel is a picture of the connection between humanity, the earth, the cosmos, and God's great love. And he says, I'm pouring it out. I'm allowing it, the whole picture, I'm allowing things to go on that's going to be difficult and doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's for a purpose. And the purpose ultimately is that I'm going to restore all things. I'm going to allow a little fire to go through the forest, so to speak, to burn up all the rough and the vines that are evil, all that stuff that is destroying nature, destroying the spirit. I'm going to allow those things to take place, all that I might replenish it, and that we might see the goodness of God and appreciate him throughout eternity. Eternity is a very long time, folks. We've been going through this book of Joel, and it speaks of things past, present, and future. But eternity is forever. And that's hard for us to comprehend because we know everything that has a beginning and sort of has an end. And so for us, eternity doesn't make a lot of sense. But whatever it is we're going on in your existence from beginning to end, it's nothing compared to what eternity is. Find your joy in the Lord. Know that God is allowing you to go through some things that he might restore you to himself and that we might see the glory and the goodness of who God is. Creation has been allowed to see those things from the beginning to the end of time as we know it. When God says, you know what, we're going to sort of reset the clock and now we're going to be into eternal time. Remember, God's outside of time. He created it. He can come into it, but he's outside of it. We don't understand. Again, that's hard for us to grasp, but God's saying, I'm preparing you now. And the earth has been prepared. For however many years it's been in existence and however many years people have been on the planet, and all those things will come to an end. And it may seem like an incredibly long time relatively to our lifespan, but it's just a drop in the bucket for eternity. So what God is allowing to go on now on the earth, and there will be a time of judgment, total restoration, and finally bringing all things back to the goodness and the glory of God. We were designed and created to worship him, and God says, I need to get you back to that. What Adam and Eve lost really in the Garden of Eden, and frankly, this was part of the process. They never knew what they had to lose. You don't know what you've got until it's gone, they say, right? So they didn't know what they had to lose. You and I, if we only had good in our lives, we wouldn't know what we had to lose. So God is saying, you know what, I need you to appreciate the love and the life that is, that you have, whether it's good or hard or, easy, whatever the case may be. I want you to see me in that. And for eternity, we will be grateful because of the goodness of God. The goodness that is finding you and has captured you, I hope. I hope you find this study being uplifting and enlightening. I hope you don't get too caught up in the process, but in the creation there at the end. It was birthing. God is birthing some things, and those are some labor pains that we will go through, that the world does go through, and ultimately the cosmos goes through. But it's all to birth this new life in eternal purposes with God. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I certainly have. We'll talk about some of these things in the future as well, but that's the end of the book of Joel. God bless you. Thank you so much. You can go back and see all the videos. They're on Ford Community Church Facebook page. And I hope you enjoy that. Enjoyed doing the study. Can't wait to do it face to face. But until then, God bless you. We love you. And we'll see you soon.